Armand here with your forecast for the week of March 10th of 2025. Two big things happening this week. Happened towards the end of the week, but I won't keep you in suspense. We have the lunar eclipse in Virgo, and we have Mercury stationing to go retrograde. We'll get to those in a second, but a little bit of context. First of all, we've been in eclipse season for for about a week and a half now as we start this forecast. And so things start bending out of shape, right? Things seem much more important than they otherwise would. Again, the thing with eclipses is they tell you what is important, but they tend to blow them out of proportion. You see things through a fisheye mirror. Indeed, if you wake up at 4 in the morning and you think, oh my gosh, finances, I spent too much money last month. How am I gonna? Okay, you need to think about finances. That is telling you something valuable, but it's blowing it out of proportion so that you're seeing it as being just more than it otherwise would be. On top of all, Mercury has been in the shadow of his retrograde this entire time. So the information that we're getting could be a little sketchy, especially since he was next to Neptune last week. He's not really in signs where he functions all that well. So the information itself might be a little off. And again, Mercury retrograde is another kind of fisheye mirror, another kind of bending things out of proportion a little bit. It's more about bending the information out of proportion, where the eclipses bend the emotional reactions out of proportion. But either way, you're not necessarily seeing things all that realistically. Venus is retrograde. That puts a little bit of a hamper on socializing and valuations and values. All of the Venus retrograde, also Venus retrograde, it's a time to step back from pleasures and indulgences, which, I mean, a Virgo full moon, full moons are usually fun. Virgo full moon is kind of fun, but it's an eclipse, and so maybe we'll be thinking a little bit differently about this full moon. We do have the moon in Leo at midweek, though, say from somewhere in the neighborhood of late Sunday through Tuesday. We have the moon in Leo, which kind of makes for a good start to the week, all things considered. We also have, as context here, all the way from the beginning of the year through the beginning of April, the first quarter, as they say, Mars is out of bounds. He's no longer retrograde, but he is out of bounds, and out of bounds planets tend to act strongly and erratically. Their energy is amplified, but not easy to direct, and Mars is in the sign of Cancer, where he is not thrilled to be. And so, again, it's that frustration and release. And we're very likely to get to that release sometime around the full moon, which is a lunar eclipse. Lunar eclipses are powerful full moons. So we sort of have this kind of uncertainty, emotionally charged, pulling back a little bit. And also, too, there's this sort of bubbling, fomenting kind of energy, which is undoubtedly going to come out in unfortunate ways in some folks. Not you, but some folks are going to be feeling this a little bit. It's a little hard to contain for some people, especially as we get to the full moon. Now, the full moon is exact on, well, from Eastern time. Oh, so this weekend, the prior weekend, this is the weekend of March 2nd, no, excuse me, March 8th and 9th. We have my favorite holiday, National Clock Change Day in the springtime, and that the clocks go ahead in the U.S. and we're on daylight savings time, unless you're in someplace like Arizona that just won't have anything to do with daylight savings time. They're rebel maverick folk out there in Arizona. They're doing their own thing. But that's okay. They go from mountain time to Pacific time and back again. So it's not like they're really completely strange or anything like that. But the sunset gets later, and the sunrise, I'm told, gets later too. But yeah, actually, I would notice it because now when I wake up, the sun is up already. last few weeks, and now it's going to be dark again for a little while, and I'm okay with that as long as the days are longer. Which anyway, I was bringing that up in part just because I love when I love daylight savings time. I don't understand why we go on standard time. After all, we're on daylight savings time about 8 months of the year. It is the standard time. And who needs it to get dark at 4:30 in the afternoon in November? I'm just saying. I'm saying. Nobody listens. Nobody listens. But anyway, in the earliest hours of Friday Eastern time, we have the full moon eclipse, the full moon lunar eclipse. So figure that tension and release is very strong Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Think like right around that period of time, the tension is very high. Now, it's a full moon. We have a little bit of lunacy. And what does that lunacy come from? It is the emotional charge on things. Things seem big, things seem exciting, in a positive way sometimes. Things seem very exciting. But there's a strong emotional charge to things. There's this kind of out of proportion power to everything that it depends how things are going for you. But again, with Mars out of bounds and everything else, there's potential for some rough spots for some people. For most of us, though, what it really comes down to is a sense of things seeming much more important than they otherwise would, for better or worse. Now, this lunar eclipse is pretty interesting for two more reasons. One, it's the sun at this eclipse. The sun is in Pisces, opposite Virgo. The sun is just past a meeting with Saturn a day before, and the moon is going to meet with Saturn right before the eclipse, or oppose Saturn right before the eclipse. So the Saturnian energy, as far as it can manifest itself in Pisces at any rate, the Saturnian energy is kind of a serious dialing back. It's a containment kind of energy. It sort of holds things in. And then we get to the full moon, which is a release point. And so again, it's that pushing in and then letting go. Eclipse season does that by itself. Mars out of bounds in Cancer kind of suggests the same kind of thing. And here we have this meeting with Saturn just prior to the eclipse, a sort of heaviness, seriousness that all of a sudden is going to spring out and release at the full moon lunar eclipse. But wait, there's more. This eclipse is closely trying to the planet Uranus. And Uranus is over in Taurus, an earth sign, trying to the moon in Virgo, an earth sign, and us. Uranus is sextile to the sun down in Pisces, a water sign. So what this suggests is that the tensions, let's call it the tensions, the push me, pull you of the eclipse full moon energy. And that's what it is, because it's an opposition. The sun is sitting over here and the moon is across this way. It's a push me, pull you situation, although I think in Dr. Dolittle that was a little bit better than this is likely to be. But that kind of back and forth. Very frequently, eclipses, lunar eclipses, as much as they're about what's going on inside of us, are played out with other people because it's an opposition. So you might have, this is the sort of thing where there might be some tension, some words with people who are significant to you, and that could be in relationship, that could be in work situations, it could be in business dealings, it could be friendships. There's a tension there. And then these easy aspects to Uranus suggest that there will be a way to resolve that tension. And it will come in the form of something that is unexpected, unconventional, not within the program. In other words, whatever the thing is, whether it's internal or whether it's with somebody else, whatever the thing is that got you kind of in a this or that, me or you kind of situation, The answer probably lies in something else entirely, and it's a matter of recognizing what that is and then giving weight to it. And that is kind of the way that the tensions of the full moon can actually be resolved in a fairly creative and positive way. Again, Saturn compresses and probably brings us the issue. So you may feel the issue, let's say Wednesday, Thursday, and then Thursday, Friday, we have that release point and the ability to come to some sort of a resolution. But you have to be willing to go outside of the box, right? The this or that, choose A or B kind of situation is probably not it. You'd have to go to choice number C, which may or may not be apparent to you. That's the eclipse. That's the eclipse. It's the typical tension and release. Things come to light. It's a full moon. It's a full moon eclipse. Things come to light. Whatever's been bubbling inside, again, whatever it could be just within you, but whatever's been bubbling inside goes outside. That's a very typical eclipse type of thing. It's very typical full, it's very typical lunar eclipse. It's a very typical full moon thing. Saturn makes the tension a little stronger. Uranus offers the opportunity to find a creative and unique solution to what seems like kind of a dead end. We're just going to be at loggerheads type of situation. And then, I mean, it need not be all that dramatic. I make it sound dramatic. It can be, but it doesn't need to be all that dramatic. It's a situation where you're stuck and you feel stuck and you have a little bit of frustration. If that happens for you, it doesn't necessarily, but if that happens for you, the solution probably lies elsewhere. Another thing about this, well, one more thing about this lunar eclipse, it is at 23 degrees Virgo. The sun is at 23 degrees of Pisces, and Uranus is at 20. He's still, since the end of January, at 23 degrees of Taurus. Once again, as has been the case really this entire winter, springtime, if those of you south of the equator will excuse me for that, 23 degrees is hot. And if you have anything at 23 degrees of any sign, it's getting some kind of vibration from the energy of the eclipse, right? And again, don't think of it as being something bad. And whatever it is, because 23 degrees has been activated really this last few months, it's probably nothing new. In fact, something that has been sticking around for the last couple of months that seemed unresolvable may very well get resolved with this energy. The other thing about this full moon lunar eclipse that we have latest Thursday, earliest Friday, is that it is very close to Mercury station to go retrograde on Saturday, the 15th. That's the Ides of March. Now Mercury retrograde, we all know about Mercury retrograde. Not a great time to sign contracts. With Venus retrograde, it's also not really excellent to sign contracts. Certainly not great for business dealings in many ways. It's not a great time to buy electronics, not a great time to get a new phone. Expect all the various communication snafus and things to go wrong and so on. Mercury is in signs that he's not thrilled with for this retrograde. It's just that, this is not where he wants to be anyway. Similar to Mars, who had a retrograde through Cancer. Mercury's not really great in the signs of Aries and Pisces. It's just not his thing. But retrograde is retrograde. So we have all the usual retrograde things. Don't buy a new book, go reread an old book, and of course we tend to feel for doing mercurial things when Mercury is retrograde, just as we tend to feel for doing Venusian things when Venus is retrograde and martial things when Mars is retrograde. We feel for it. Planet is closer, stronger. I actually saw Mercury for the first time. Well, the first time that I knew I was seeing it anyway this week. We had some clear nights, and I actually serendipitously found a program that like maps out the night sky. And then I tried to replicate it when I was home and I couldn't do it, but I found another one and it showed where Mercury was. And I got to see Mercury for the first time that I knew I was seeing Mercury. Probably saw it, but I didn't know. And I got to see it this week. Mercury is really hard to see. He's usually too close to the sun, and he's going to be too close to the sun very soon, but I did see it. Anyway, I forgot where I was going with that, but that's because Mercury's retrograde or going retrograde. So the mercurial energy is exactly what we would expect it to be usually, but in signs that he's really not happy, so we may get a little bit of extra from the retrograde. Again, he conjuncted Neptune during his shadow. He's going to conjunct Neptune again during the retrograde, and it'll be someplace around April 17th that he's going to conjunct Neptune again going forward. So issues that have been stewing since late February, early March are potentially take a good 6 weeks or so to come to any kind of a resolution. And to tell you the honest truth, um, I don't know that Mercury finally conjuncting Neptune in mid-April is going to resolve anything. It seems like it might be the final round of deep confusion. But after that, things could resolve. So, when you have paperworky issues and, a lot of clients talking about things like, when do I file these papers and, when do I do this and when's a good time to communicate this? I mean, we do our best to find good times, but there's not like a lot of opportunity for that kind of thing going on right now. So, you can't do nothing, but you can you can temper your expectations for it. It's worth noting, of course, that Mercury going retrograde, stationing to go retrograde, it's right around the stations that we get the most prominent snafus, right? That's when things usually really show up as problems. And it's worth noting that this happens right at the eclipse. Now, so Mercury's stationed to retrograde on Saturday and the eclipse Thursday, Friday are so close together that they're influencing each other. So the eclipse will make the Mercury retrograde stuff seem all the more important, all the more of a an issue that can get you kind of a little bit bent out of shape. On the other hand, Mercury's retrograde station is affecting the eclipse, such as we may fly off the handle with the eclipse based upon misinformation, things that are not quite accurate. And so it's really wise at this time to kind of back off and say, okay, experience what you're experiencing, note what seems to be notable, and pay attention to what needs to be paid attention to. Take care of any things that, absolutely have to be taken care of in the short term. Don't let it go. Don't let it go. But don't do more than what's absolutely necessary, particularly, let's say, Wednesday through Sunday of this week. Just kind of keep it to a minimum. Just kind of keep it to a minimum. Don't think that, we're going to get a lot done or anything. I know I've been saying this for a while, but this is kind of the weather that we're having right now. And it's not just a you can't do things kind of weather. It is you kind of feel like you should be doing something. There is a great motivation to act, and yet things are likely to screw up a little bit when you do. So you kind of want to, sort of keep it to the bare minimum. By all means, take care of routine tasks. By all means, do what needs to be done in terms of, you what we used to call adult daily living skills. So keep your adult daily living skills sharp, but don't expect too much. When we try to get stuff done, it's going to be a bit of an issue. What you have to get done, what really does require a lot of work and so on, that, the thing that is due or whatever, try to get it done as early in the week as possible. Because again, the end of the week is going to be a little bit of a astrological storm that is marked by high energy and low certainty. that's a bit of a problem. A client had a thing about Mercury retrograde that I thought was really this is the Mercury retrograde conundrum. And her thought was, I mean, I have to paraphrase here a bit, but her thought was that she was going to go and buy a computer now, even though Mercury's in the shadow of his retrograde, because the tariffs that are coming on goods from China, particularly, are going to affect Apple products. And so she wanted to avoid paying a higher price on computers. That seems reasonable. And even in the face of Mercury retrograde, well, that's being smart. So if you don't get the computer now and the tariffs go into effect, then you've got to pay more. But of course, Mercury is retrograde. So what if the tariffs don't go into effect? What if they get reversed? And the tariff situation has been reversing itself. It's been spinning like a top, right? So there's Mercury retrograde the other way around. Right? So you think, well, I'm going to save money now by buying because the tariffs are going to come in, but then the tariffs don't come in. And perhaps people were even charging more for computers now because they know people want to buy it before the tariffs. And so you wind up paying a higher price for something based upon your fear of something that doesn't come into play at all. If you don't get the specifics of that, because I went through it kind of fast, if you don't get the specifics of it, you just see that with Mercury retrograde, it's not a good time to be going out and buying electronics because no matter which way you look at it, you don't really know with any clarity what the smart move is. And with Venus retrograde, and Venus rules all kinds of values and valuations, you really, really don't know what anything is worth right now, except for this forecast, which is worth quite a bit.